Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel, Canada Immigration. We hope you're doing great. In this video, we're going to talk about OINP Employer Job Offer, In-Demand Skills Stream. Ontario's Immigrant Nominee Program offers a great opportunity for foreign workers with specialized skills through the Employer Job Offer, In-Demand Skills Stream. This pathway is designed for candidates with work experience in TEER 4 or 5 occupations that are highly sought after in Ontario. Whether you have expertise in construction, agriculture, or personal support services, this PNP stream can help you secure permanent residency in Canada with employer sponsorship. In this guide, we'll explore the eligibility criteria, application process, and benefits of this immigration option. Register an expression of interest. Before you can apply to this stream you must Zenotation Spot register an expression of interest. Zenotation Spot receive an invitation to apply. Follow these steps to apply. If you are using a representative, or you are a representative, the submission process is different. Learn more about how to appoint a representative or register as one. Applications submitted by self-appointed representatives are invalid and will be withdrawn by the OINP. Your application will be returned as incomplete and your application fee will be refunded. Follow these steps to apply. Zenotation Spot click the Submit an Application button below. Zenotation Spot log into your My Ontario account as a returning user. Zenotation Spot from your My Applications page, click on the file number link to begin your application. Please note your application file number is different than your EOI file number. Job offer requirements. To qualify under the Employer Job Offer, In-Demand Skills Stream, you must have a job offer in Ontario from an employer that meets the following requirements. 4. Position is urgently necessary to employer's business. The position offered must be urgently necessary to your employer's business. This means that the job offer must align with your employer's existing business activities and the position must be urgently needed to maintain or grow ongoing business activity. 1. Work based in Ontario. The work you do while in the position of the job offer must occur primarily in Ontario. You or any member of your family may only hold or have held equity in your employer's business, either directly or indirectly if the equity was less than 10% and only if it was obtained as part of the remuneration package as an employee. The combined total amount of equity held by you, or any of your family members, must be less than 10%. Note that a family member includes your spouse, common law partner and children under the age of 22, including their children. Applicant requirements. After you receive an invitation to apply, you may apply to the Employer Job Offer, In-Demand Skills Stream. You must meet all the requirements in the categories below in order for your application to be approved. Please refer to Section 7 of Ontario Regulation 422/17 for more details on each requirement. 1. Expression of interest and invitation to apply. Zenotation Spot you must have received an invitation to apply and applied within the deadline identified. Zenotation Spot you must demonstrate that you had the qualifications that you claimed you had in the expression of interest that you registered with the OINP and attested to. 2. Work experience. You must have at least 9 months of cumulative paid full-time work experience, or the equivalent in part-time work, in Ontario, in the same in-demand occupation, same NOC code, as your job offer. You must have gained this work experience within the 3 years prior to the date you submit your application, not the date you received the invitation to apply, while legally living and working in Ontario. Cumulative means the work you've done must add up to 9 months. It does not have to be 9 months of continuous work. Full-time work experience means working in a job with at least 30 hours of paid work in a week that amounts to at least 1,200 hours of paid work over a 9-month period. Part-time equivalent work experience means Zenotation Spot working in one job for at least 15 hours of paid work in a week that amounts to at least 1,200 hours of paid work over an 18-month period. Zenotation Spot working in more than one job for at least 30 hours of paid work in a week for 9 months that amounts to at least 1,200 hours of paid work in that 9-month period. Vacation periods, regular sick leave and other standard paid leave entitlements as provided for in collective agreements, workplace legislation and/or individual employer policies are not considered interruptions to full-time employment. Extended leaves are considered interruptions to full-time employment and are not to be included in the calculation of work experience. If you are using periods of self-employment, you will need to provide employment documentation that is independently verifiable through third parties. This can include client reference letters indicating your duties and periods of work, as well as evidence of ongoing payments to you personally, for the services provided, for example, invoices. Please also note that your hours of self-employed work must be quantifiable to ensure that you accumulated at least 1,200 hours over 9 months of employment. reference letters from yourself, your business partners and/or a family member are not accepted by the program. 3. A valid license or other authorization, if applicable. If your job offer is for an occupation that requires a mandatory license or other authorization in Ontario, you must hold a valid license or authorization from the appropriate regulatory body in Ontario when you apply. 4. Language, you must be able to understand, read, write and speak either English or French at a Canadian language benchmark level 4 or higher. To prove that you have the mandatory language skills, you must take an approved English or French language test before you submit your application to this stream. The test date must be within 2 years prior to the application submission date. For English tests, we accept International English Language Testing. We only accept the General Training Test. Please note that we do not accept the IELTS 1 Skill Retake Test. Zenotation Spot Canadian English Language Proficiency Index Program, we only accept the General Test. Zenotation Spot Pearson Test of English Core, please note we only accept the PTE Core Test, not the PTE Academic Test. For French tests, we accept Zenotation Spot Test d'Evaluation de Français pour le Canada, TEF Canada. Zenotation Spot Test de Connaissance du Français pour le Canada, TCF Canada. Zenotation Spot Learn more about the English and French language tests. 5. Education, you must have a Canadian secondary school, high school, diploma or credential, or its equivalent in another country. If you completed your studies outside of Canada, you need to obtain an educational credential assessment report that proves your education is equivalent to a Canadian high school diploma. The assessment must be done by one of the following organizations, designated by IRCC. Zenotation Spot Comparative Education Service, University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies. Zenotation Spot International Credential Assessment Service of Canada. Zenotation Spot International Credential Evaluation Service. Zenotation Spot International Qualifications Assessment Service. Zenotation Spot Medical Council of Canada, professional body for doctors. Zenotation Spot Pharmacy Examining Board of Canada, professional body for pharmacists. Zenotation Spot World Education Services. Each organization charges a different fee and has different processing times. Please check the website of each ECA organization to choose the one that is best for you. You must provide the OINP with an electronic copy of the ECA report when you submit your online application. The report cannot be more than 5 years old at the time you submit your application. How to authorize the OINP to confirm your ECA results? We must be able to confirm your ECA results with the organization that completed it. This means you must authorize the organization to share the results with us, the Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program, electronically. It is not enough to authorize the organization to share the results of your assessment with IRCC for the purposes of your application to the OINP. Do not request a duplicate paper copy from your ECA organization to be mailed out to the OINP. Follow these steps to authorize the OINP to access your ECA results. Zenotation Spot Comparative Education Service, submit an online request form. Zenotation Spot Medical Council of Canada, request the report. Once it is available, request a file transfer by logging into your physiciansapply.ca account, then click on Other Service Requests in the left panel and follow the steps. Please enter Ontario nominee at ontario.ca as the third party's email address. Zenotation Spot World Education Services, order a copy of your ECA report online and indicate the Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program as the recipient of the report. For the other organizations, no additional steps are required. Please contact the ECA organization directly if you have any specific questions about the process for getting an ECA or how to authorize and share your ECA results with the OINP. 6. Intention to live in Ontario. You must intend to live in Ontario after you've been granted permanent residence. We determine this by examining your ties to Ontario, which can include doing things like Zenotation Spot working or having worked Ontario. Zenotation Spot getting job offers, applying to or interviewing for jobs. Zenotation Spot studying. Zenotation Spot volunteering. Zenotation Spot leasing or owning property. Zenotation Spot visiting. Zenotation Spot having professional networks and affiliations, family ties and personal relationships. 7. Legal status in Canada, if applicable. If you are applying from within Canada, you must have legal status, a visitor record, study permit, or work permit, at the time you apply and should maintain that status until the time of nomination. You may apply if you are in maintained status at the time of your OINP application submission. Maintained status means that you submitted an application to Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada to renew/extend your temporary status document, a visitor record, work permit, study permit, before its expiry date. You can remain in Canada and continue to work or study under the same conditions as your existing permit until a decision is made on your pending IRCC application. Employer requirements. Please refer to Section 4 of Ontario Regulation 4/2217 and the Employer Guide for more details on each requirement. 1. General requirements. To qualify under the employer job offer, in-demand skills stream, your employer must: Zenotation Spot have been in active business for at least 3 years prior to submitting your application. Zenotation Spot have business premises in Ontario where you will work. Zenotation Spot have no outstanding orders made against them under the Ontario Employment Standards Act, 2000 or the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Zenotation Spot demonstrate that enough effort was made to recruit a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident prior to offering the position to you. This only applies if you are currently living outside of Canada or working outside of Ontario. 2. Revenue requirements. Your employer's business must meet the relevant revenue requirement for the most recently completed fiscal year, the year used for tax or accounting purposes. Zenotation Spot a minimum of $1 million in total gross annual revenue if you will work or report to work at a location in the Greater Toronto Area, City of Toronto, Durham, Halton, York and Peel regions. Zenotation Spot a minimum of $500,000 in total gross annual revenue if you will work or report to work at a location outside the Greater Toronto Area. Meaning of report to work. In cases where the applicant will work at more than one location, the location where the applicant will report to work means either: Zenotation Spot the location where the applicant's immediate supervisor or manager works. Zenotation Spot the location of the administrative office where the applicant will receive work assignments. 3. Full-time employee requirements. Your employer's full-time employee requirements are defined by your work location. These requirements are different depending on if your work location is inside or outside the Greater Toronto Area and must be met when the application is submitted. Work location inside the Greater Toronto Area, City of Toronto, Durham, Halton, York and Peel regions. If you will work at a location in the Greater Toronto Area, or will work at more than one location but report to work at a location in the GTA, your employer must have at least 5 full-time employees who are Canadian citizens or permanent residents who work or report to work at that location. Work location outside the Greater Toronto Area. If you will work at a location outside the Greater Toronto Area, or will work at more than one location but report to work at a location outside the GTA, your employer must have at least 3 full-time employees who are Canadian citizens or permanent residents who work or report to work at that location. Meaning of full-time employee. A full-time employee is an employee who has worked a minimum of 30 hours per week. When the employer employs a mobile workforce, the minimum number of full-time employees they must have at the location where you will work or report to work can include both: Zenotation Spot employees who work at that location, Zenotation Spot employees who report to work at that location. 4. Employer form. Your employer must make an application for approval of an employment position by filling out and signing an application for approval of an employment position, employer form. If your application is missing the application for approval of an employment position, employer form, we will return it as incomplete. In that case you must register a new expression of interest and receive an invitation to apply before submitting a new application. Your employer then must give you the form so you can scan and upload it with your application. When we assess your application, we may need additional supporting documents from your employer to validate information included in the application for approval of an employment position, employer form. Please read the employer checklist for a list of possible documents that may be requested. Scoring factors. Once you register an expression of interest under this stream, you will be assigned points based on the following factors. If you are invited to apply, you will be required to submit specific documents to support each scoring factor for which you received points. Scoring factors are not the same as stream criteria. You must meet all criteria for this stream and provide the mandatory documents with your application. Refer to the document checklist for the employer job offer, in-demand skills stream. Employment/labor market factors. Job offer, NOC broad occupational category. Zenotation Spot occupational category 0, 2, 3, 10 points. Zenotation Spot occupational category 7 to 7 points. Zenotation Spot occupational category 1, 9, 5 points. Zenotation Spot occupational category 4, 8, 4 points. Zenotation Spot occupational category 5, 6, 3 points. Job offer, wage. Zenotation Spot $40 per hour or higher, 10 points. Zenotation Spot $35 to $39.99 per hour, 8 points. Zenotation Spot $30 to $34.99 per hour, 7 points. Zenotation Spot $25 to $29.99 per hour, 6 points. Zenotation Spot $20 to $24.99 per hour, 5 points. Zenotation Spot less than $20 per hour, 0 points. Work Permit Status. Zenotation Spot with valid work permit, 10 points. Zenotation Spot without valid work permit, 0 points. The work permit must confer legal status. Job tenure with job offer employer. Zenotation Spot 6 months or more working in job offer position, 3 points. Zenotation Spot less than 6 months working in job offer position or not currently working in position, 0 points. Zenotation Spot the work in the job offer position must have occurred within Ontario. Canadian work experience, earnings history. Based on a notice of assessment issued by the Canada Revenue Agency in the last 5 years. Zenotation Spot $40,000 or more earnings in a year, 3 points. Zenotation Spot less than $40,000 earnings in a year, 0 points. Regionalization. Regional immigration, location of job offer. Northern Ontario, 10 points. Other areas outside GTA, except Northern Ontario, 8 points. Inside GTA, except Toronto, 3 points. Toronto, 0 points. For regionalization scoring factors, the regions are defined as follows. Zenotation Spot Northern Ontario includes the following census divisions: Muskoka Haliburton, Nipissing, Parry Sound, Manitoulin, Sudbury, Greater Sudbury/Grand Sudbury, Temiskaming, Cochrane, Algoma, Thunder Bay, Rainy River, and Kenora. Zenotation Spot other areas outside of Toronto and the Greater Toronto Area, except Northern Ontario, includes all Ontario regions except those listed as part of Toronto, the Greater Toronto Area and Northern Ontario. Zenotation Spot Greater Toronto Area, except Toronto, includes the regional municipalities of Durham, Halton, Peel, and York. Zenotation Spot Toronto includes the City of Toronto. If you are nominated under this stream, if your application is successful, you will receive the following by email. Zenotation Spot a nomination approval letter. Zenotation Spot a work permit support letter, if applicable. Zenotation Spot a nomination certificate. Once you have the necessary documentation, you must apply to IRCC for a work permit, if applicable, and permanent residence. Please note, a nomination from the OINP under this stream is subject to the following conditions and/or restrictions. Zenotation Spot you must continue to demonstrate on a reasonable basis an intention to reside in Ontario. Zenotation Spot you must be employed in the approved employment position as of the date of your nomination, if you are already working for the employer. Zenotation Spot you must apply for a work permit within 6 months and begin working in the approved employment position within 10 months from the date of your nomination, if you are not already working for the employer. Zenotation Spot if you have not begun working in the approved employment position within 10 months from the date of your nomination, you must inform the OINP immediately in writing at ontarionominee@ontario.ca. Zenotation Spot you must continue to be employed in the approved employment position during the nomination period, i.e. until you receive permanent residence. This means that your terms of employment must remain consistent throughout the nomination period. This includes your Zenotation Spot employer, Zenotation Spot position title and duties, Zenotation Spot wage, Zenotation Spot hours of work, Zenotation Spot work location. https://immigrationnewscanada.ca/ontario-pnp-option-with-TEER-4- Show website. Know about Ontario PNP option with TEER 4 or 5 occupations. Ontario PNP permanent residency option with TEER 4 and 5 jobs. We all know that candidates in TEER 4 or 5 occupations are not eligible for express entry. To obtain a PR with job profile in TEER 4 or 5 occupations, formerly NOC C or D, only one specific Ontario provincial nominee program is the option. This is the employer job offer, in-demand skills stream that offers permanent residency for TEER 4 or 5 job profiles. OINP is the acronym for the Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program, which is official name for Ontario Provincial Nominee Program. PNPs permit provinces and territories to establish their own immigration programs in accordance with their economic and population development strategies. First things first, below are the eligibility criteria for the in-demand skills stream and a full list of eligible occupations. Eligibility criteria for Ontario PNP In-Demand Skills stream. To qualify, you must have work experience. A minimum of 9 months of cumulative, full-time, paid work experience is required. And this should have occurred within 3 years prior to the application submission date. Z-Notation Spot Education, you must have completed at least the Canadian equivalent of secondary school, high school. Language proficiency, only CLB Level 4 or higher on an English or French language proficiency test is needed to apply. CLB Level 4 in IELTS means 4.5 in listening, 4 in writing and speaking, and 3.5 in reading. Sufficient funds, you must have sufficient funds or income in Ontario to cover the settlement fees for any Ontario PNP. Since you will need a job offer to qualify under In-Demand Skills stream, the sufficient funds requirement is automatically fulfilled by the job offer. Z-Notation Spot Job Offer Requirements, a full-time, 1,560 hours per year, and permanent/indeterminate, having no end date, job offer is required in any of the eligible occupations listed in later part of this article. Z-Notation Spot salary/pay for this job offer must be equal to or higher than the median wage level listed on Job Bank website for the occupation offered based on the specific region of Ontario. Go to Job Bank website to find the median wage. Z-Notation Spot seasonal and/or contract-based job offers are ineligible. Furthermore, your job offer should not affect the employment of a person involved in a labor dispute. You must demonstrate your intent to reside in Ontario by providing a list of ties to the province. Legal status, if you are residing in Canada at the time of application, you must possess and maintain a legal status, such as a study/work permit or visitor record, until nomination. List of TEER 4 or 5 occupations eligible for OINP In-Demand Skills stream. 2. Eligible occupation. The position offered can be in any location in Ontario, inside and outside the Greater Toronto Area, and must be in one of the following occupations in National Occupational Classification TEER Category 4 or 5. Z-Notation Spot NOC 44101, Home Support Workers, Caregivers and Related Occupations. Z-Notation Spot NOC 65202, Meat Cutters and Fishmongers Retail and Wholesale. Z-Notation Spot NOC 75110, Construction Trade Helpers and Laborers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 75119, Other Trades Helpers and Laborers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 84120, Specialized Livestock Workers and Farm Machinery Operators. Z-Notation Spot NOC 85100, Livestock Laborers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 85101, Harvesting Laborers. Z-Notation Spot number 85103, Nursery and Greenhouse Laborers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 94141, Industrial Butchers and Meat Cutters, Poultry Preparers and Related Workers. Z-Notation Spot the position offered must be outside the Greater Toronto Area, City of Toronto, Durham, Halton, York and Peel regions, and must be in one of the following occupations in National Occupational Classification TEER Category 4 or 5. Z-Notation Spot NOC 14400, Shippers and Receivers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 14402, Production Logistics Workers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 65320, Dry Cleaning, Laundry and Related Occupations. Z-Notation Spot NOC 74200, Railway Yard and Track Maintenance Workers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 74203, Automotive and Heavy Truck and Equipment Parts Installers and Servicers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 74204, Utility Maintenance Workers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 74205, Public Works Maintenance Equipment Operators and Related Workers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 75101, Material Handlers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 75211, Railway and Motor Transport Laborers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 75212, Public Works and Maintenance Laborers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 85102, Aquaculture and Marine Harvest Laborers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 94100, Machine Operators, Mineral and Metal Processing. Z-Notation Spot NOC 94101, Foundry Workers. Z-Notation Spot NOC 94102, Glass Forming and Finishing Machine Operators and Glass Cutters. Z-Notation Spot NOC 94103, Concrete, Clay and Stone Forming Operators. Z-Notation Spot NOC 94104, Inspectors and Testers, Mineral and Metal Processing. Z-Notation Spot NOC 94105, Metalworking and Forging Machine Operators. Z-Notation Spot NOC 94106, Machining Tool Operators. Z-Notation Spot NOC 94107, Machine Operators of Other Metal Products. Z-Notation Spot NOC 94110, Chemical Plant Machine Operators. Z-Notation Spot NOC 94111, Plastics Processing Machine Operators. Xenotation Spot NOC 94112, Rubber Processing Machine Operators and Related Workers. Xenotation Spot NOC 94120, Sawmill Machine Operators. Xenotation Spot NOC 94121, Pulp Mill, Papermaking and Finishing Machine Operators. Xenotation Spot number 94123, Lumber Graders and Other Wood Processing Inspectors and Graders. Xenotation Spot NOC 94124, Woodworking Machine Operators. Xenotation Spot NOC 94132, Industrial Sewing Machine Operators. Xenotation Spot NOC 94140, Process Control and Machine Operators, Food and Beverage Processing. Xenotation Spot number 94142, Fish and Seafood Plant Workers. Xenotation Spot NOC 94143, Testers and Graders, Food and Beverage Processing. Xenotation Spot NOC 94200, Motor Vehicle Assemblers, Inspectors and Testers. Xenotation Spot NOC 94201, Electronics Assemblers, Fabricators, Inspectors and Testers. Xenotation Spot NOC 94202, Assemblers and Inspectors, Electrical Appliance, Apparatus and Equipment Manufacturing. Xenotation Spot NOC 94203, Assemblers, Fabricators and Inspectors of Industrial Electrical Motors and Transformers. Xenotation Spot NOC 94204, Mechanical Assemblers and Inspectors. Xenotation Spot NOC 94205, Machine Operators and Inspectors, Electrical Apparatus Manufacturing. Xenotation Spot NOC 94211, Assemblers and Inspectors of Other Wood Products. Xenotation Spot NOC 94212, Plastic Products Assemblers, Finishers and Inspectors. Xenotation Spot NOC 94213, Industrial Painters, Coaters and Metal Finishing Process Operators. Xenotation Spot NOC 94219, Other Products, Assemblers, Finishers and Inspectors. Xenotation Spot NOC 95100, Laborers in Mineral and Metal Processing. Xenotation Spot NOC 95101, Laborers in Metal Fabrication. Xenotation Spot NOC 95102, Laborers in Chemical Products Processing and Utilities. Xenotation Spot NOC 95103, Laborers in Wood, Pulp and Paper Processing. Xenotation Spot NOC 95104, Laborers in Rubber and Plastic Products Manufacturing. Xenotation Spot NOC 95106, Laborers in Food and Beverage Processing. Xenotation Spot NOC 95107, Laborers in Fish and Seafood Processing. Job Offer, NOC Broad Occupational Category. Xenotation Spot Occupational Category 0, 2, 3 or 10 points. Xenotation Spot Occupational Category 7, 7 points. Xenotation Spot Occupational Category 1, 9 to 5 points. Xenotation Spot Occupational Category 4, 8 to 4 points. Xenotation Spot Occupational Category 5, 6 to 3 points. Job Offer, Wage. Xenotation Spot $40 per hour or higher, 10 points. Xenotation Spot $35 to $39.99 per hour, 8 points. Xenotation Spot $30 to $34.99 per hour, 7 points. Xenotation Spot $25 to $29.99 per hour, 6 points. Xenotation Spot $20 to $24.99 per hour, 5 points. Xenotation Spot less than $20 per hour, 0 points. Work Permit Status. Xenotation Spot with valid work permit, 10 points. Xenotation Spot without valid work permit, 0 points. Xenotation Spot the work permit must confer legal status. Job tenure with job offer employer. Xenotation Spot 6 months or more working in job offer position, 3 points. Xenotation Spot less than 6 months working in job offer position or not currently working in position equals 0 points. Canadian Work Experience, Earnings History. Based on a Notice of Assessment issued by the Canada Revenue Agency in the last 5 years. Xenotation Spot $40,000 or more earnings in a year, 3 points. Xenotation Spot less than $40,000 earnings in a year, 0 points. Regional Immigration, Location of Job Offer. Xenotation Spot Northern Ontario, 10 points. Xenotation Spot Other areas outside GTA, except Northern Ontario, 8 points. Xenotation Spot inside GTA, except Toronto, 3 points. Xenotation Spot Toronto, 0 points. The OINP Employer Job Offer, In-Demand Skills stream provides a valuable pathway to permanent residency for skilled workers in TEER 4 or 5 occupations. If you have a job offer from an Ontario employer in an in-demand field, this program can be your gateway to building a stable future in Canada. By meeting the eligibility requirements and following the application process, you can take advantage of Ontario's growing labor market while securing long-term residency. That is all for today, in this video. What are your thoughts on this? Please let us know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching the entire video. Hopefully, the information is useful to you. See you later, in the next video. Till then, take care.